Grinding Gear Games dropped their Settlers of Kalguur announcement about a week ago, and we are a little less than a week away from the GGG livestream in which they will reveal the full details of the upcoming league. This means we're right in the middle of teaser season, and as usual, there is a lot of hidden stuff in the backgrounds of all of these teaser videos, so let's really take a deep dive in breaking all of these down. Before I do, one very brief bit of business. A lot of people have asked if I'm going to do a Toxic Rain Pathfinder video or guide for the upcoming league. Since I've been playing through a lot of league starters and I haven't done one for TRPF. Yes, absolutely. Of course, I'm working on it. I meant to say this in the last couple of videos. I just kind of forgot. Now here it is. Okay, so GGG has released 8 teaser videos so far. They may put out another one before I am done, hopefully. I have kind of been just waiting around a day or two to finish this video because I wanted more and I didn't exactly want to wait until the big reveal, but you know, I wanted to kind of make sure there's a good bit of meat here. So it is tinfoil hat time and let's get to it, but first don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, so we have here the big compiled teaser page and they do a nice job with this, and so I'm just going to start with the very first one. You know, they have the newest ones at the top, so we'll just start with the first.
Hi,
and here we have,
I'm Mark Roberts.
I'll just let Mark go. Hi Mark.
This is the first in a series of videos covering upcoming changes in our 3.25 expansion, the Settlers of Kalguur.
Okay, so that kind of sets the stage here, the tone here. All of these are going to be like quality of life improvements, sort of, but then there is a lot of balance change stuff kind of hidden in here as well.
In 3.25, reservation effects, such as heralds and auras, persist through death, allowing you to get right back into combat as fast as.
Okay, this is great. I'm really happy about this. This is a really good job of them bringing back some excellent quality of life from PoE 2 back to little old PoE 1. But obviously the first thing that I think a lot of people, Reddit really took notice of this immediately, is that this determination has less base armor in it than normal. And if we look at a determination here and compare these two, this is a level 22 determination. You can see plus 2.1 meters to radius, 50% more armor. That puts us right in the range of a 21 and a 22 are both 50% more armor, and then 2.1 meters, that would be 22. So 2261 would be the additional armor before, and this is 1131. 1131 times 2 is 2262. That is, within a margin of error of being a 22. So it looks like they have cut the armor for determination exactly in half. The base flat armor that it gives, and I would imagine that they're doing the same thing with Grace. What I am curious about here is, will it impact discipline? Will it impact purity of elements? Will it impact like purity of fire, cold, and lightning? Possibly purity of fire. I could see hypothetically if we wanted to nerf this kind of thing, cutting the additional max fire res from all the purity skills and maybe making it so that you're like immune to the corresponding ailment. You're immune to Ignite and Scorch. I don't think they're going to go that route. I would imagine that the purity skills probably don't get touched. Maybe Purity of Elements. I think if they were to cut Purity of Elements ailment immunity, I think that this would just be a completely dead aura again. But I think if they cut the amount of resistance that you get out of it, maybe they cut this from like 20 to 34 to like 15 to 25 or 15 to 30 or something, then I think that could maybe still be useful for a lot of builds. Fact of the matter is that they did make it so that the quality is kind of a shot in the arm for the amount of actual elemental resistance that you get out of it. And then that all gets multiplied by aura effect. So still a bit of a nerf, and definitely this right here just on its own is a bit of a nerf to champion builds, sort of champion builds, attack champion builds that are wearing Perseverance, getting Grace, getting Determination, getting Armor and Evasion, getting a lot of value out of both of those. Now we're going to circle back to that later, but that is definitely the first thing I noticed in the set of changes. And then additionally, this build is, as you can see, it's a Chaos Dot build. And of course it's a Chaos Dot build immediately getting killed by porcupines, so that's typical, but it is a Chaos Dot build, and it's interesting that they the very first thing they showed off was a Chaos Dot build. As somebody who really enjoys Chaos Dot, that to me kind of said, hey, they have Chaos Dot on the on the brain, that's something that they're gonna definitely like not continue forgetting about existing. And, you know, just off the top of the dome, Subtractum would definitely be happy about that. Scissorin would be happy about that. I would be happy about that. I really love Chaos Dot. So that's pretty good. And then also, this is the first of many, dead Ancestral Totem laying on the ground right here at the start of the clip. Just laying there dead. Definitely something to pay attention to as we keep looking through the rest of these. All right, let's move on to the second one here. And I will unmute for this. Unmute the YouTube for this.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts.
Oh,
Game
hi, Mark.
Director on Path of Exile. We've got a tiny quality of life improvement today. In the Settlers of Kalguur update, you can start harvest encounters with just a single action. And
okay, this is pretty basic. There's not really a lot to it. I think he's even going to make a joke about how the marketing team
yes, we made a whole video
forced him to do this.
Just because our marketing team said so.
Anyhow, if we actually look at the character, if we look at what's going on here, you know, this isn't really a huge change. It saves you a couple of seconds. I think that's fine. I think the bigger thing is I did scan throughout here and, you know, maybe it's just hidden, but I couldn't see a dead totem in here. This is one of the 2 videos of the day that I can't see any dead totem hidden in, but we can look at the action bar kind of hidden behind the stupid YouTube timeline here. We can see it's a Cyclone build. You know, it's a Cyclone build on a 6-link. It has, I believe that's Blood and Sand Stance. That is Sand Stance is active. It has Pride. It has Vulnerability Curse. And then it has an automation support. And we can see that automation support is casting Molten Shell. And I guess also, well, maybe casting Blood Rage. Maybe that's being hand cast and just not visible on this bar. But as we can see, you know, this is a physical damage build. It's using Pride. It's a Cyclone build. You know, it's all the usual stuff you would expect from a physical damage build. And no totems. And more importantly here, it's generating Rage, and it is not using Rage support. If we look up support gems in the PoE wiki, we can see all of the little icons for support gems. We can even sort them, which is pretty nice. And if we go down to... but we don't want to do that. We want to actually just find Rage support here. Rage support is this little lowercase g. And if we look through very small font, we can see MUOI and something in blue. And so that's obviously not going to be a lowercase g red support. So this Cyclone character, this dual-wielding Cyclone character, is generating Rage, even though it's not Rage support hooked up. It's actually generating quite a bit of Rage, you know, pretty quickly. So that to me indicates that Rage is coming from somewhere, and that's pretty cool. All right, now let's move on to the third teaser trailer here, and this is just going to be a very basic one as well.
Game Director on Path of Exile.
Hi, Mark.
This time around, we're bringing a few improvements from Path of Exile.
All right, this is a very basic
OG.
character. Not really anything to say about it. It's like an Ice Shot Ranger in Act 1.
In 325, you'll no longer...
Dead totem right there. And then I really do love this change. I think it's going to be like huge quality of life for Act 4 and Act 6. I've had quite a few times where I've forgotten to get the waypoint in Act 4 cave.
You'll no longer need to interact with waypoints to unlock them. You can...
Thank God, you know, they're bringing this back from PoE 2, and this is like great quality of life. This alone makes me feel like PoE 2 was worth it. All right, that's kind of it for this one though, pretty quick. All right, now we're moving on to number 4, and this one is actually pretty interesting. A little bit more,
I'm
more
Mark
going
Roberts,
on.
Game
Hi, Mark.
Director on Path of Exile. In the Settlers update, we've reworked item quality. The rarity of the item is no longer relevant when applying chisels, blacksmith's whetstones, and armorer's scraps to non-unique items. Instead, the amount of quality they provide is now based on the item level. Those currencies now apply 20% quality to very low-level equipment, with that amount reducing as the item level increases. This makes them much more appealing to use early game.
Okay, so they did answer an important question about this. It's not in the little drop-down or whatever, but there was like a bit of a FAQ about this, in which people asked, like, what about maps, basically? And their answer was that since rarity won't impact chisels or anything like that, it basically is just, if you chisel a white map, it just goes straight to 20%. If you chisel a yellow map, it's 10% per chisel. And if you chisel a a red tier map than it is 5% per chisel. And so that's true whether it's, I guess white magic or rare, and I think that is pretty great. So that was kind of their answer to maps. Now there are several things hidden in this little teaser here. Obviously there's a dead totem right there, right in between Nessa and Bestel. And this is in Act 1 Lion Eyes Watch, the same little character that we saw before. The Ice Shot Ranger with now dash, and that looks like precision there. I did notice a couple of things here. Obviously, like this Wrath Span, the Stealth Boots Wrath Span here has a huge life roll on the boots. You can see 121 maximum life. So if I just look up we'll just look up some boots here. If you look up the T1 max life rolls, 89 is the T1 max base life, and then you can get flat evasion rating and flat life as another roll, and those can happen at the same time. And so if we add those together, the maximum 28 plus 89, that's 117, and as you can see, this has 121 on these stealth boots. So hypothetically, I mean, that means there has to be some sort of either a newer higher tier of life roll, or some sort of new mod where, because this is increased evasion rating rather than flat evasion rating, this has to be a new mod, basically, that gives more life in some way. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. Same old base as before, though. And then if we scrub forward just a bit, the Syntrek are exactly the same. Compare these to regular Syntrek. They're all within the standard values. Same with these crappy rawhide boots. And then this Superior Nightweave robe, totally brand new base. If we look at the best possible energy shield base, that would be a Vol Regalia. And as we could see from the Vol Regalia, the energy shield range is 171 to 197, and it requires level 68 and 194 int. This is 238. Let's see if, okay, there we go. There we have the range. 227 to 260 is the range, so that is obviously quite a lot higher. If we just compare the high end, 197 divided by 260, that's like 30% higher than the range for Vol Regalia. That's a pretty huge difference. And also the required level is 78 instead of 68, and the required int instead of 194, which is pretty manageable for a lot of builds. 254, that does actually require a pretty significant investment into a primary stat and strength dex in order to get this, but it does look like there is going to be a new tier of armor bases that will be dropping, and I think that is the justification for culling out some of the some of the base defensive attributes that are associated with determination and grace, some of those, basically the armor or the evasion. And it does make me think that maybe they would then actually nerf discipline. It's possible that they would nerf discipline if they're going to be buffing energy shield this much, because if they don't nerf discipline and then they also increase energy shield on bases by this dramatically, like this is like a 30% potential energy shield increase. So any sort of energy shield builds, int stackers are really going to be having a great time next league if there isn't any nerf to discipline. And I think, honestly, even if there is, I still think this is probably going to wind up being a net positive. Additionally, still not done here, looking at this character, it's using a Quell Rain, it's using a Hyries Bite, Gold Rim, Darkness Enthroned, Wanderlust, Karui Ward, Tabula, but notably, Praxis Rings in Act 1. Praxis Rings, if we look those up, Praxis Rings are, I believe, a level 22 required base. One of my favorites for leveling a new character, getting that massive reduction in mana cost of skills, having it work even with channeled skills, really helps a lot with fixing mana early on, makes the whole process of leveling an alt smoother, but you're not going to be level 22 hanging out in Lion Eyes Watch, so I'm guessing that there maybe are some tweaks to like uniques for leveling twink characters, and I really, really like that. Something that's definitely hidden in there, but is very appealing to me. All right, now let's move on to teaser number 5, and this has some pretty big implications, especially in conjunction with kind of the last one, and then also the very first one that we looked at, and so let's just jump in here.
I'm Mark Roberts.
Oh, hi,
Director
Mark.
On Path of Exile. We've got more news about item quality today. Quality bonuses on armor and weapons are now multiplicative. In other words, weapons with full quality will give 20% more physical damage, and armor with full quality will have 20% more local defenses.
That's one of those things that could very quickly be glossed over, but actually has a Pretty enormous impact. Again, Dead Totem hanging out here. But also, like, this is just a humongous buff for physical damage builds, for physical auto attack, or not auto attack, but attack-based builds. It also has pretty big implications for armor stackers, I think, having significantly increased armor and evasion from gear by getting a 20% more multiplier. So if this means that perfect fossils are going to be significantly more valuable, getting all of your gear up to either 29 quality if it's corrupted, using tainted currency, or 30 quality if it's uncorrupted, getting that armor, the evasion, all of those stats up significantly higher is huge. And then in conjunction with the potential for higher quality bases. Quality is not the right word, but you know what I mean. Higher armor, higher evasion, higher energy shield bases, like we just saw in the last teaser, has really humongous implications for, I mean, armor stackers, sure, but just like builds across the board, certainly for any sort of like champion build that's using Perseverance, this change is humongous. For any build that is using a physical weapon to do damage with, that is pretty enormous as well. I think this actually, you know, in conjunction with the last teaser, I think these wind up, even with the nerf to the base amount of armor and evasion that you would get from Determination and Grace, I think this winds up being a pretty significant buff to attack-based champions once you combine this all together. Now, I will point out that this is the same character as before. You know, we see the 2 Praxis rings, we see the Hyries Bite, and all of that. Notably, what are those? 7 League Step on the character, though, instead of the Wanderlust. It seems like it's a little bit earlier on in the lifespan of the character because you see an ice shot but no dash or precision, so I would guess that they probably had initially intended to do these teasers in opposite order. Also no Quicksilver flasks like before. I don't really think there's much to take away from that, but that is definitely interesting to me since it's very clearly like the same-ish character. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game Director on Path of Exile.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Today, we've got more improvements coming in hot from Path of Exile 2. We're adding static life bars to bosses.
Okay, this is, again, another Dead Totem here. This is great. This looks great. This looks very modern. They are kind of modernizing the old PoE as well as making PoE 2, and I like that. This is the kind of thing, you know, there are some people who are maybe a little nervous about PoE 2's gameplay being slower or more methodical or deliberate or whatever, and they like the zoomy one-button playstyle PoE 1, and they're already committed in their minds to not wanting to change. But this kind of thing, the game looking better, the game actually being like nice to look at, I think that's pretty undeniably just something that's good for both games to have, and so this rocks. I'm very happy about this. And additionally, we can notice here there's another item here on the debuff bar. There's fire, cold, lightning, chaos, and then this. I can't really tell, it's quite small, but it sort of looks like armor. So I would guess that this is indicative of like either vulnerability curse on there or something that would sunder armor, penetrate armor, basically breaking armor, being a new tracked debuff that shows up on enemy frames. I think that's great. As for the character that we're looking at here, we have a Fire Trapper. It has Frostblink. It has, I think that's Infernal Cry. I couldn't tell. I spent a long time looking at this, but I'm pretty sure that's Infernal Cry. And then that is Punishment Curse down here. And then as you can see, it's a Righteous Fire something, Chieftain, Elementalist, I don't know, with Transcendence MTX, and it looks pretty great. Again, I already mentioned the Dead Totem in there, and, you know, nothing really all that fancy in this one, just a good change. I'll let Mark finish what he was saying.
Not all bosses will have them initially, but we're starting with the Pinnacle bosses and Act bosses in 325.
I think that's great. Indicates that they are committed to making it be like this for all bosses over time, but, you know, just starting with these guys. Again, nothing super fancy in terms of the change. It just is, I think, a really good change. And now let's move on to the 7th update, which I'll just go ahead and say before I even open it up. S-tier update, insane quality of life. Cannot overstate how good this is for the game. Okay, take it away, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts.
Oh, hi,
Game
Mark.
Director on Path of Exile. In the Settlers update, the Exile's arms have gotten a little longer. We have increased the range you can pick up items when using a keyboard and mouse to be more on par with controller users. Here's a comparison. You can find
Okay, this is absolutely insane. I even drew up a little. I used my incredible Photoshop skills here to make a nice little indication of how this is going to work in the coming league. I think that this really says it all. A picture truly can be worth 1,000 words. Now, in terms of kind of breaking down the stuff that is in the background here in this video, it's definitely not showing up there. Here we go. Dead totem, right there. Boom. Spotted it, got it. That's our dead totem friend here. And then if we look at this character, it is an earthquake build. It is using 3 different war cries. I don't remember what all of these are off the top of the dome. I think it's like seismic, intimidating, and rallying cry, something like that. We have pride here. We have punishment as our curse of choice. And then we have a 5-link earthquake build here. And I think these are all just kind of standard links. I'm going to look them up here, I can't remember, and I do want to just take a look, especially since we have this lovely support gem page. So our gems are X, M, U, and V. And so we'll just start at X. That would be Fist of War support, definitely not Cold to Fire. Fist of War support. M would be melee physical damage support, U would be brutality, and then V would be volatility. It's not multiple SOTM, so it's volatility. So very standard physical damage setup on the Earthquake Slam. Just a very normal looking build. You can see Fortify. We could see that previously on the Cyclone character, I think all the way back in the second teaser as well, had a bunch of Fortify stacks, and then it is in... I believe this is Blood Stance, or yeah, I think that's Blood Stance. And then if I mute it so we don't blast our ears here, we can look at our rage bar here, or this character's rage bar anyway. As you can see, it slams and it gets a bunch of rage, even though it's not using rage support. So once again, getting like a lot of rage. That's like 5 or 10 rage. Definitely they're leaning more into rage. They're leaning more into blood and sand or flesh and stone. They're leading into punishment, curse, and then into war cries. But very clearly, totems are going to be dead, and they are looking like they're going to be promoting Melee League, which has me very excited. Has a lot of people very excited. And now let's go ahead and jump to the final of the teaser trailers, and let's just take a listen. I'll just let it run all the way through, and then I'll kind of go back and pick through things.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts.
Oh, hi,
Game
Mark.
Director on Path of Exile. In the Settlers update, you might come across a new oil, found only in Blighted and Blight-ravaged maps. All the secret notables that can be anointed on your amulet now use this oil. We have added many more notables to that pool, like this one, or this one. You can
Okay, I spent a long time looking around here through all the red wax to see if I could see the totem. You know, I figured there had to be a dead totem in here somewhere, and I couldn't find it, but I think it might be up here. I think it might be this little shadow here hidden up around these candles. That's the only thing I could maybe think it is that it's hidden up here, because I definitely didn't see it down here. In any case, I think this is a pretty interesting addition. I think it's good for the game for more league mechanics to have unique rewards. I'm jumping in game here and kind of going to show this off. You know, I think Ultimatum is maybe like a great example here. Tainted Catalyst coming only from Ultimatum, but then you're able to get all the rest of the catalysts from whatever. Heist is maybe the best example of this. Heist has like replica uniques and experimental bases, and then it also just has like tons of other random crap available through it. I think that's a great way for league mechanics to function. They can throw tons of random stuff from other league mechanics at you, but then very specifically, there will be, you know, something that you can only get by actually doing that league mechanic, and then there is a justification for doing that league mechanic and it remains valuable. I think that's great. To jump back into the trailer here, we can kind of look at this character. It seems to be very similar to the previous character. Clearly it's a Marauder from the way he's standing, and it's another Earthquake build. It's using 2 war cries visible here, and Kalguur's Undying Rage, some influenced armor in these 3 pieces, and 2 steel rings. So I think they're just signaling to us here that this is definitely a physical damage build, and you know, if there's no totem anywhere other than maybe this is it right up here, that's my only guess. But, you know, I think what they're telling us here is the physical damage builds are back on the menu, slams are back, not that they ever really went away, but they're definitely back now, and it's going to be Melee League finally after all these years. Now let's take a look at these 2 anoints here, this prismatic oil, which I think looks pretty cool. Let's take a look at the 2 anoints that they have shown off. And just to kind of talk a little bit about some of the hidden, hidden anoints, these are the things like this: Crusader, the increased mana and transfiguration of mind, or tenacity. Or what's another one here? Hardened Scars, this one right here. I used to like this a lot. So things like that, and they're basically just expanding that pool. And Incorporeal is the first one they showed off. This one right here makes it so that Elusive will stay active 50% longer, but then fall off at 20% instead of 0. This is actually a buff in both directions, especially if you are playing an assassin build, which is usually the way that you're going to be taking advantage of Elusive, like in terms of, I don't know, full-fledged advantage of Elusive. I guess like some dagger builds can make use of Elusive as well without being an assassin, but I really like Assassin. It's actually one of my favorite ascendancies, but it is terrible. And I've kind of had tinfoil hat on, hoping for a rework to Assassin this league. I had it the last couple of leagues and it didn't come true, but I think it might be on the menu this time around since they were showing off Incorporeal Elusive. In fact, like that, maybe it's possible. So unlike basically every other ascendancy in the game where you have to get Elusive through some other mechanic, Assassin gets that through critting. And as we can just read here, Elusive will give you an initial 15% chance to avoid all damage and 30% increased move speed, and then as it decays, it will slowly fall in value until it hits 0, and then it'll fall off completely. And if you already have Elusive, you can't reapply it. And so that's why it's actually, I think, better that it falls off at 20% instead of 0, because then you're able to refresh it more quickly. And then especially for Assassin, where you're not starting out with 15% avoid all damage and 30% move speed, you're starting out with, I guess, like 23% avoid all damage and 45% move speed. Like, I think this actually winds up being pretty good for Assassin, especially with it also then taking 50% longer to decay. For normal characters, non-assassins, I think this winds up being about 20% more effect on average of Elusive by having this enchant or this anoint. For assassins, I think the math is maybe a little bit closer to like 30% more effect of Elusive, which is actually pretty huge. I think the reason that people correctly don't love Assassin is that it has no defensive value. But really, it doesn't have no defensive value. It's just that all of the defensive value is tied up in Mistwalker. And it would be nice to see them get some more defensive value somewhere, but like just leaning even harder into the Elusive of it all would definitely be an approach. Maybe it could work. I'm certainly interested in it. I also think that just this idea of giving more of these hidden anoints could be good. It could make Blight uniques themselves a lot more valuable since those can be anointed. And there's definitely something interesting that could work out here. I think it's a pretty cool idea. I don't know that this is, for an assassin build, worth giving up a different anoint slot, like a second curse or something. But maybe. Now, taking a look at the second anoint here, mixed munitions. I am much less sure of how to make great use of this. I never, ever play trap builds. I didn't really like trappers in Diablo 2. I don't really like them in Path of Exile. It's weird that I like mines, since I know that they're a more controversial playstyle among the majority of the player base for PoE. And they certainly have like lower quality of life than traps. And there are, if we look at the difference between traps and mines on the wiki, if we look at like trap, and then just look at the list of trap skills, obviously, okay, yeah, some of the transcended gems really pad this out, but then if we look at mines, if we look at active mine skills, pretty short list, very short list compared to the list of traps. Like, there's way more traps than there are mines. And, I don't love them. I don't know what else to say. Here we are, basically. So I'm sure there's a way to make this work, this mixed munitions enchant work and be useful, anoint rather. Maybe you make a build that throws traps that drop mines. That sounds weird and terrible, but maybe that is, I don't know. It's the first idea I had, not anything I sat and worked on, but anyway, there it is. All right, as I was working on the video, really after I'd finished it and kind of decided to wait around another 10 minutes, they dropped another spoiler, and this one is a pretty big one, kind of a doozy, so let's go ahead and take a look now.
I'm Mark Roberts.
Oh, hi, Mark.
On Path of Exile. In 3.25, we're adding a 6th map device slot.
Totem right there, dead. Kirak here. pretty normal looking hideout, nothing really all that remarkable going on in here. And just looking at this build, this is a Cyclone build, Cyclone, and then, you know, Vulnerability Curse, Automation Support, Leap Slam, Pride, and then again, I think this is a Flesh and Stone, so this is, I can't remember, I can never remember which one is Blood and Sand stance and which one is Flesh and Stone, but either way, this is the Sand stance of those two, so it does seem like they're leaning further into both of those, and obviously you can tell from from the other tabs up here that I've already been looking ahead at some of this.
This one was a bit of a nightmare for our UI designers. You don't want to see the prototypes. Or maybe you do.
These are ridiculous. I really like this one right here, the Tabula one.
The 5th and 6th map device slots are unlocked by completing either your first 10-way encounter with the Maven or completing your first Tier 17 map. You can find...
Okay, so I think that's actually a pretty good way to do it, the 10-way. That way you really will get that 5th map slot device like significantly sooner than you did in the previous league or even in the past when you had to do a Legion 5-way, which never really made a lot of sense. Legion 5-way is like, that's such a weird thing. Like, why put it behind a Legion 5-way? Why not put it, or a 4-way, I guess? Why put it behind that? Why not put it behind like a Blight map? Or it just didn't make sense that it's behind a random league mechanic other than that it was implemented during that league. So putting it behind a 10-way, Maven 10-way, totally makes sense. I think that's really good. And then you have a second one that is much more of a thing that you go chase from Tier 17 maps. Now, hopefully they do also nerf Tier 17 maps. No indication of that thus far, other than that the monster dies very quickly, but, you know, that doesn't really mean anything. I know some people were kind of hoping for like 8 map device slots or something like that to really have just a massively increased number of scarabs. I think adding just one more in is totally fine. I will say that with the pattern they've gone with, this like layout here, I'm not exactly sure how you're going to put in for, I don't know, Shaper. Things that have a 4 fragments sort of layout. I'm not exactly sure what way you're going to put them in. Probably these 4, I guess. It's a little weird for that, and I understand why maybe they could have gone with something like this one instead. I don't know that either like this is great. This one maybe could have worked as well. In any case, I still think this is really good. It's gonna allow like a lot more variability between farming strategies. Even just adding like one more scarab in really opens up a lot of possibilities for different farming strategies. Maybe some people wanted 8. I mean, I know some people wanted 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever. That probably would have been a bit too far. But a sixth, as they say in the Anglosphere, yeah, 6th one, pretty good. In both of these videos, you'll note that the whatever build this is at 50 rage here in this first one, and then in the second one, if we just let that run a little bit here. Okay, 0 rage, and then he's only gonna hit like 2 times, and then the boss will die. And you can see the rage is generating fairly quickly. Now, I did think about a couple of possibilities here, especially just throughout kind of looking back at this whole video since I've been editing it up until this point. The Berserker Ascendancy, you do get Crave the Slaughter. You get 1 rage on hit with attacks, and then you can only get that every 0.3 seconds. I don't know. Yeah, I can't really tell. You know, they don't have numbers turned on ever in the default UI or any of the UI they use for teasers, so you can't tell if that's 1 rage being generated every 0.3 of a second. Maybe all of the generation of rage that we're seeing is from implicit gloves. In some of these cases, gloves implicits, I should say, you know, this character does have glove implicits, so that's possible, but some of the rage regeneration we were seeing looked like it was campaign stuff where they wouldn't have. So maybe they're showing off, maybe they're teasing a Berserker rework. That's possible, rather than rage being something that is kind of thrown at all of the melee builds, you know, along with war cries being the thing that replaces totems. Additionally, something I wanted to show off was they're very clearly showing off how the commitment to physical, you know, really just like whatever 9-tupling down on physical melee damage builds being back in the spotlight again with this Rizlathus coil here, which is definitely a belt that has kind of fallen into disuse over time. It really was the influence for the volatility support gem, which is kind of I mean, it's usurped it, but obviously you could use both of them together. More max fizz, less minimum fizz, kind of increases the range of damage that you can deal, but then gives you like a lot of physical damage, a lot of life, and then really good life regen if you're stunning enemies a lot, which definitely will happen if you're playing a very hard-hitting physical damage build. And then it's just a Flesh Ripper axe, nothing really all that remarkable gear-wise. Belly of the Beast, just kind of a normal build that deals physical damage and is taking down tier 17s and Maven 10 ways, and that's not really anything out of the ordinary, but it does sort of say everything that they've said with the rest of this video, which is that melee physical damage builds, they're a focus for the upcoming league, and that's great. All right, so that is it for teasers, at least the first week of them. You know, the reason for the season is teasing, and GGG are the masters of it. I think the biggest thing that I am hopeful for in the coming league is that Chaos Damage Over Time caster builds get a buff. They are not in great shape right now, and it's a pretty fun archetype, so that would be excellent to really have that experience a resurgence. I also think it would keep build diversity up. You know, I think right now it looks like everybody is planning to play melee in the coming league, and I think that would be great. I certainly think it would be cool if it was just melee league. Sounds pretty sick to me, but, you know, build diversity is always good for the game. And doing that through Chaos Dot, I think, would make a lot of people happy, including myself. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.